According to my mother, I was a so-called psychic boy when I was younger. Whenever we went on trips and such, I'd stare into the distance and say stuff like, "There's a soldier over there. There's a dark shadow over there." I'd talk to the air, or suddenly run off chasing nothing. Apparently I was quite difficult to deal with. But my mother was particularly fed up with my death prophecies. I'd suddenly say things like, "That person won't be around much longer," or "That person is going to die soon," to acquaintances and passers-by alike. Apparently, 3 people close to us actually died when I said they would. Sick of my proclamations, one day my mother got upset and told me to tell her when she was going to die too. Apparently, I told her right down to the hour, and, not expecting so much detail, she was rather shocked. But when I started school, all of this gradually stopped. These days, I don't remember saying any of that stuff. I didn't hear about any of it until I was in high school. And the date I told my mother hasn't approached yet, but thinking about how it's getting closer gives me goosebumps. Your predictions have never been wrong. I'm prepared to die on that day, my mother said, and apparently she has already made funeral arrangements and such too. I told myself there's no way it could be true, but honestly, I'm scared. How must my mother have felt all these years because of what I said as a kid? Whether it actually happens or not, I've decided I'll be the best son I can until that day. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you missed it, Toshiden Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4 is now available. Once again, there are a host of new legends to explore, both horrifying, bizarre, and otherwise. And of course, a new season of the podcast that has just wrapped up, so if you haven't checked it out yet, it's available right now. You can also find the audiobook for the first volume of Toshiden, either on our Patreon, Fourth Wall store, or various audiobook outlets, including Spotify and Audible. So don't miss out on that either if you're still looking for more. This week, we're looking at some potentially deadly encounters with the other side. Japanese spirits do like to hold a grudge, after all, and some of those grudges can span lifetimes. First up, a group of young boys decide to sneak into their friend's house after being told they can't visit. But there was, of course, a very good reason for that. And their decision to break the rules is perhaps going to cost them for the rest of their lives. Find out why in Jinyaku. Please listen to this story from 25 years ago, when I was in the 3rd grade. I lived in a place called Sea Village, and a girl my age by the name of T-chan moved there. She was a bright and cheerful girl, but she possessed spiritual powers that were beyond the level of merely seeing ghosts. Honestly, just by writing this story here, anyone who lived nearby will probably recognize her. She was just that famous. I was in the same class as her, but being in the 3rd grade, of course, I didn't believe any of her stories. "Okay then, I'll show you," she said one day, and a bunch of curious boys followed her. I was too scared, so I didn't go, but the next day, everyone was still talking about it. Apparently, T-chan briefly went home, grabbed a Polaroid camera, and took 3 photos. A ghost was clearly visible in each and every one of them. Even now, I still clearly remember them. Photo 1. A middle-aged man with his head drooping next to a tree. Photo 2. A person in full armor with a squished face. Photo 3. A screaming face that filled the entire photo. Of course, seeing the photos, I had no choice but to believe her. And thanks to that one incident, T-chan became popular with the boys, while the girls were almost scared of her. Of course, there were a few boys who were scared and wouldn't go near her either. But none of this seemed to bother T-chan. She was honestly a cheerful girl who liked to laugh a lot. And, honestly, I had a bit of a crush on her. So, T-chan lived in a house on the outskirts of the village, and there weren't any other houses in a 100-meter or so radius of it. One day, one of the boys who was good friends with her decided to ask about it. "So why did you build your house all the way out there?" "My mother said that if we don't live there, then bad things will happen," T-chan said. It seemed that her mother also possessed great spiritual powers. Around this same time, our family was renting a house, but looking for somewhere to build. Being just a kid, I wanted to live near T-chan's house, so I told my mother there was lots of empty land on the outskirts of the village, and suggested we build near T-chan's house. My mother looked into it, and, strangely, all of the land surrounding T-chan's house was owned by the local government. When she asked them about it, they refused to sell. The only house on all that land owned by the prefecture was T-chan's house. At the time, I didn't think much more of it, but looking back on it now, that was honestly kinda weird. When I mentioned this to T-chan the following day, she laughed. "Well, of course you can't. Why on earth would you want to live there?" Honestly, even without asking, I could figure out why. But still, not even in my wildest dreams could I have imagined the real reason. One day, a group of boys who liked T-chan asked if they could visit her house. T-chan showed an expression none of us had ever seen before. "Absolutely not," she said. But the boys, myself included, really wanted to go, and so we decided to sneak into her house after school, without permission. The first thing that surprised me was the large barbed wire mesh that surrounded her house. The only part that was free was the gate leading to the entrance. Because we wanted to sneak in without T-chan knowing, we decided to look for another way in, eventually climbing over the mesh and then heading towards the rear of the house. Even now, I still clearly remember that there wasn't a blade of grass anywhere. The ground was made up of just dirt and small stones. Then, when we were about halfway to the house, one of the boys with us let out a scream and started running. Unconsciously, we all followed him, injuring ourselves badly on the barbed wire as we jumped back over it and ran all the way back to school. When we asked that boy what happened, he said that a black mist appeared and was trying to envelop us. He was the only one who saw it, but he was the smartest of our group, and not the type to lie. And T-chan had warned us it was dangerous, so we had no reason to doubt him. The next day, we tried to tell T-chan about what happened, but before we could, she started screaming at us. "What on earth did you do?" It was the first time I'd seen her get angry. After that, she told us to skip class and then dragged us back to her house. She stopped us about 200 meters from the wire mesh fence and told us to wait there. We stood there for around an hour and a half. Then a woman approached us. She was T-chan's mother. "I'm terribly sorry," she said as soon as she saw us. "It'll be okay." That just honestly made me feel even more worried. We then followed her back to T-chan's house. Inside, the walls were covered in oval shapes of paper that looked like talismans. Once we were in, We saw Tea-chan in white clothing kneeling on the floor. Her mother walked over to her and suddenly slapped her across the face. "You! Do you know what you've done?" she screamed. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry," Tea-chan cried, blood trickling from her nose. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to them," her mother said. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry," Tea-chan said to us over and over. Being just kids, we were confused as to what was going on. We were the ones who had done something bad, and unable to bear the sight of our beloved Tea-chan crying and bleeding from her nose, we all started crying too. Tea-chan's mother then picked up the phone to call someone. We weren't close enough to hear what she was saying, but she then called all our parents and the school, and all of our families, siblings included, were summoned to their house. Within an hour, everyone arrived. We later learnt that she had contacted the prefectural office as well. Then, another hour later, a woman in her 20s, wearing similar clothing to Tea-chan, also arrived. "It appears they have been taken, huh?" she said as soon as she saw us. "Let us hurry then." I was so confused that I just cried some more. I remember that seeing my mother crying as well terrified me even more. I guess it was a purification ceremony of sorts, but it was nothing like what you see on TV. The woman didn't utter a word. She just knelt on the floor with her eyes closed. But during that time, I started to feel kind of woozy, and it was like there was a voice growling somewhere deep in the back of my head. That sound gradually got louder, and then finally, it disappeared. I think this lasted about 10 minutes. "Well, you should be okay now," Tea-chan's mother said. "For now, I'd like your parents to remain here, however." After that, we went back to school with Tea-chan. Our teacher seemed to have heard what happened, as he was rather kind when we arrived. That must have been difficult, huh? The next day, Tea-chan was dark and silent, like an entirely different person. She ignored us when we tried to talk to her, and we didn't see her smile even once. Then, 3 months later, our teacher told us she had moved. We spent our days in regret after that, thinking we were the reason she had to move. And that marked the end of our 3rd grade adventures. But the reason I'm writing this here now is that just yesterday, I ran into Tea-chan for the first time in 25 years. My mother and I went back to her old house. According to my mother, we were told to gather there again between April and May 2011, and then several mysteries were finally solved. I'll sum everything up as I'm a slow writer, but if you want, I'll get it all down tonight. And before I forget, does anyone know what those oval talismans might have been, and the ceremony where we all knelt in silence? Alright, I'm back. I think it was last autumn when I got a call from my mother. She told me to come home on April 4th. She told me to take the following day off as well, but she didn't tell me anything about why. April 4th. After I finished work, it took me 2.5 hours to return to my parents' house. They put on an amazing dinner, but they still wouldn't tell me anything about why I was there. April 5th. My mother woke me up at 4:30 in the morning. She told me to get changed and ready to go out. I bumped into a friend from the 3rd grade at the station the day before, so I was starting to suspect what might be going on. As expected, we made our way towards T-chan's house. But when we got there, I was shocked. The wire mesh fence had been replaced with a 3-meter tall wall with rat guards and barbed wire on top. It looked like a prison. And, believe it or not, there was a high voltage warning sign too. Oh, and while I remember, ever since that incident in the 3rd grade, this house was made forbidden to approach. Though I don't think anyone wanted to go near it after that anyway. As we walked down the road, there was an iron gate up ahead, and a man in a suit stood before it. My mother told him our names, and he asked for ID. Then he unlocked the gate. "Go ahead," he said. I had assumed that I would find T-chan's house in the middle of the lot, but instead, there was nothing. Just the dirt ground full of stones, and 3 women in white that I recognized. One of them called out my name. I recognized her in an instant. T-chan. I wanted nothing more than to apologize to her, so I ran over and, crying, threw myself on the ground before her. 10 minutes later, everyone else arrived, and it seemed they all had the same idea as me, as the first thing they did was apologize to T-chan. Although, I was the only one who got down on my hands and knees to do so. But what made me happiest of all was seeing T-chan look bright and happy like she used to be. First, the 3 women introduced themselves. They were T-chan's mother, T-chan herself, and the woman who had performed the purification ritual 25 years earlier. They didn't use their regular names, but rather introduced themselves with really long names that kinda sounded like posthumous Buddhist ones. The reason they called us there was to open the land and to hold a memorial service for our guardian spirits. Basically, the land we were currently standing on was called Jinyaku. It was the nest of an incredibly evil spirit, sort of like a jibakure that's bound to the one location. If you stepped foot on this land, it would cause misfortune, harm, or perhaps even spirit you away, or kill you. To eradicate this Jinyaku, a special exorcist had to remain there for close to half a year. It seemed that this time the government had asked T-chan's mother to fill that role. It took 25 years to eradicate the evil, but if another victim appeared during that time, then it would start again. Normally, people's sixth sense would keep them from approaching the area unconsciously. But if you wanted to go there bad enough, then you could easily override that instinct. In our case, I think we all really liked T-chan a lot, so that was why we went. However, that black mist was probably just an illusion. Apparently, the Jinyaku couldn't be seen with human eyes, so that mist was likely a sort of warning alarm created by that boy's guardian spirit, combining with his own fear of the place. The problems all began when they started to develop the land for sale. They wanted to build a residential area, but the land was originally a dense forested area. As they began to level the earth, 2 workers then went missing. Looking closer, they discovered some bumps in the earth that looked like man-made burial mounds, but they flattened those as well. When the local officials heard this, they implied that it might be the work of a Jinyaku. As such, the government bought the land and started the process of purification. Amazingly, it seemed our guardian spirits had been taken by the Jinyaku in our stead. Apparently, that ceremony we took part in 25 years ago was to offer them instead of us. Then, It was time for the memorial service for our guardian spirits. This was the same as last time, where they knelt in silent prayer. Apparently, once they were done with that, our new guardian spirits would be born. It was scary to hear that I'd been without one all this time. And that was that. But before I end, I'd like to say one more small thing. Apparently, T-chan's attitude towards us changed because she figured out that we all liked her. She stopped talking to us because she didn't want the same thing to happen again. Honestly, hearing that she knew I liked her was the toughest part. How embarrassing. I haven't checked over this before posting, so some parts of the story may be missing. But if there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask and I'll answer if I can. Thank you for reading. The man in this next story encounters something life-changing on his way to a capsule hotel for the night. Something so dangerous that he may never truly be free of it. But what is it, and what does it want? Find out in The Incident Last Year. I'm sorry for the lengthy story, but now that a year has passed and things have managed to calm down, I can finally remember what happened with a clear mind. This all happened around a year ago. It was a Friday, and I was more than a little drunk after visiting a few bars with some work colleagues. Of course, we had missed the last train, so the four of us went to a nearby capsule hotel together. We explained to the front desk that there were four of us, but they only had 2 rooms available. And so, being the oldest, I gave up my spot, as did my colleague, who lived the closest. The taxi ride home would end up costing him the same as spending the night in the capsule hotel anyway. And so, the 2 of us went outside. Then, he made his way towards the station to get a taxi, while I went the other way. I called another capsule hotel to see if they had any vacancies, and thankfully they did. So I started walking in that direction. I think I was only 10 meters away from the entrance when I suddenly stopped. I don't know why, but only 2 or 3 seconds later, suddenly a person fell right in front of me. There was a horrible sound, and before me lay a man on his back. His body wasn't moving. I suddenly experienced what it's like to be plunged into an indescribable situation that causes your brain to shut down. When I finally came back to my senses, I approached the man. "Are you okay?" But as I got closer, it hit me that I'd now found myself involved in something quite terrible. First, his head was in a strange position. It was bent at a 90-degree angle, and the right side was caved in. There was blood everywhere. He looked to be a regular guy in his 50s or so that you might see anywhere. He was wearing a yukata from the capsule hotel, so I rushed inside and informed the guy at the front desk about what had just occurred. After that, I was kept for close to 2 hours while the police interviewed me and an ambulance was called. It turned out he really was staying at the capsule hotel, and because a window was open in the cafeteria on the 3rd floor, they agreed I was nothing more than a witness, and after checking my license and taking my address, they let me go. By this point, it was after 4 a.m, so there was no point staying at the hotel. Instead, I visited a manga cafe to take a quick nap, but I was wide awake, and in the end, unable to sleep. That night, the nightmares began. I was standing in the dark, and I heard that same awful sound of the old man hitting the ground in front of me. Then he stood up, his head lolling side to side as he approached me. I wanted to run, but my body refused to listen. Grinning, the man then grabbed me. We disappeared further and further into the darkness together, and with the sensation of falling, I woke up. When I fell asleep, I had that same dream again. This happened 5 or 6 times that same night. And every night I had that same dream. At first, I was terrified, but soon I got used to it. But still, having the same dream over and over whenever I fell asleep started to take a toll on me. And I didn't just have this dream at night. I also had it when dozing on the train as well, so I was never able to actually rest. The following Wednesday, I think, a colleague asked me to join him for drinks at an izakaya bar. Apparently he was worried about me, because day by day I was looking the worse for wear, so he wanted to talk to me about it. Of course, I couldn't tell him about the dreams, so I just said I wasn't sleeping well. "Well then, let's drink up until you pass out," he said. We drank so much that I got plastered, and then, when I got home, I slept like the dead. I didn't have any strange dreams that night. Starting the very next day, I started drinking like a fish every night. Of course, I was hungover the next day, but I didn't have any nightmares. Still, it wasn't like I could continue living like this, and it started to affect my work as well. I was often late, and I was sweating the alcohol out like a pig at work. Of course, my boss reprimanded me, and so I stopped. But as soon as I did, the bad dreams came back. I was so done with everything that I started considering whether I really should see a psychiatrist. About a week later, I fell asleep on the train on the way to see a client for work. I was standing in the darkness. Thinking I was having that same dream again, I soon realized something was different. The old man who always grinned at me, his head lolling from side to side, just stood there with his eyes wide open and teeth bared, but he didn't move. Then his mouth opened. He said. Then a voice calling out to me woke me up. "Sir! Sir!" An old man I didn't know was shaking my shoulders. At a glance, he had a somewhat rough demeanor about him, and I thought perhaps he was angry at me for snoring or something, so I quickly apologized. But instead, he smiled. "What are you sorry about? I just wanted to ask you something, so how about we get off at the next stop?" I was confused, but in the end I relented, and we got off together at the next stop. As I got off the train, I suddenly remembered that I was supposed to be meeting a client, so I called to let them know I wouldn't be able to make it today. And then I entered a cafe near the station with the old man. "Let's sit down over there," he said. Utterly confused as to what was going on, I ordered a coffee, while the old guy ordered a coffee and sandwich. As the staff member left, suddenly the old man started speaking. "Sir, you're going to die. You know this too, don't you?" I burst into tears. "Yes," I said. I explained everything that had happened while the old man quietly ate and drank. "Let's go back to my place," he said when he was done. "This will take quite some time, so you call in sick for the rest of today." I did just that, telling them I wasn't feeling well and had just gone to the hospital, and now I'd be returning home. We left the cafe and I followed the old man home, but he didn't say a single word the entire time. We got on the train and got off in a residential area 3 stops later. His house was there. A gentle-looking older woman greeted us. Then she showed me to a Japanese-style room before she brought over some tea. The old man went to a different room, and around 30 minutes later, he returned holding a prayer book and a rosary. Kneeling before me, he drank some tea and then began speaking. You sure have done well to come this far. If it weren't for the strength of your guardian angel, I don't think we would have ever met." I started crying again. I'm the second son of the so-and-so temple. Ever since I was a child, I've been reading scriptures to imitate my father, and at some point, I developed the ability to see and hear things that others cannot. However, that doesn't mean that I possess any special powers or strength. When you were on the train, I could tell that you were possessed by something quite evil. If I had tried to take it head-on, it would have outright killed me. I'm sure my older brother could have handled it, but he's no longer with us. And as his successor, I'm useless. So, at first, I was going to pretend like I didn't see anything. You might think it's all that man's fault, but the most terrifying thing isn't actually him, but rather the thing that possessed and then killed him. You didn't just happen across him as he fell. It tried to drop him on you from above. That's how it kills and gains more power. And once that happens, it becomes powerful beyond control, able to kill as it pleases. That's what I sense surrounding you right now. But there's something off. I can sense it, but it's like it's just the remnants. As I tried searching for it, I discovered your guardian angel has been keeping it in check. Because it was busy dealing with the real danger, your guardian wasn't able to do anything about the strange man. That's why you keep dreaming about him. All we can do right now is cleanse you of that strange man's spirit, and then sever the bond between you and the far more terrifying presence. This is why I woke you up when you were sleeping. I can't just ignore someone I may be able to help, you know? I continued crying, unsure of what I could even say. To put it simply, a monster is trying to get you. It's reaching out desperately for you, but something I can't really see is holding it back, and it can't grab you. You're right on the edge of its fingertips, and it's desperately trying to get you. The thing holding it back is your guardian angel. Those fingertips belong to the strange man. You are connected by the fact that the monster knows you are there, I suppose. That is why we have to cut those fingertips off before the thing holding it back fails, so we can hide you from it. Then, the monster will give up and look for its next target. And this is something that even I can manage. Hearing him explain it like that made perfect sense. Then, he handed me the rosary and spent the next 2 hours reading scriptures. When he was finally done, he told me what would happen next. These beads are a memento of my father. They are incredibly important to me, but I will lend them to you. Keep them close to you at all times. As long as you have them, the monster will struggle to find you. I must further investigate whether I've fully severed the connection between you, so come back here every month until I tell you that it's fine. Now, you must never go back to that area where you saw the strange man ever again. Now that he has been cleansed, he will likely return to where he died. The monster is absolutely hanging around that area. If you go back there, these beads will be of no help. I think the monster was just testing the waters this time, so to speak, and wasn't actually serious about taking you. It no doubt thought you'd be easy prey, but when it faced resistance, it withdrew. But if the prey that slipped through its fingers were to show up again, this time it wouldn't let you go. I would be unable to help you again. Then it would use you to get to me too. We'd all die. But until this connection is fully severed, do your best not to think about it. Forgetting it ever happened is the best thing you can do right now. When he was done, I went home. That night, I didn't dream of that strange man again. Well, to tell you the truth, sometimes I do still see him, but once I go back to sleep, he's gone. And it really is only very occasionally. I kept the rosary on me at all times too. I wore it whenever I went to sleep and even kept it secured with tape. 1 week after all that happened, I quit my job. I returned to my parents' house and found work at a small business instead. And I still visited that old guy's house once a month as well. But last month, I finally got the all clear and gave the rosary back. However, the old guy then gave me a rosary he made, just in case. I don't tape it to my arm like I did before, but I do still wear it whenever I go to sleep. He told me I no longer have to see him anymore, but I intend to keep visiting him until I die. And finally this week, a young man working at a club ends up hooking up with a girl who visits there, despite it being against the rules. But is it really just the two of them when they go out? What tragedy lies in her past that is affecting their present? Find out in The Shadowing Man. This happened when I used to work at a club. I was really into dancing at the time, and so I went to the club every weekend. As such, I inevitably got to know the owner pretty well, and one day he asked me if I'd like to work there part-time after 2 employees quit. At first, I wasn't sure what to do, but going to the club all the time was pretty expensive, and this way I'd be able to watch the dance videos in the club for free. So in the end, I agreed. But once I started, well, it turned out to be a pretty tough job. I had to make the club spotless before any guests arrive, and once or twice a month that would take up my entire shift. And so, whenever customers arrived, I always went out of my way to treat them well. One day, during my 3rd month or so working there, 2 guests arrived. I had never seen them before, but I made sure to strike up a conversation with them whenever I had a chance, so I could perhaps turn them into regulars. Then, as the club was about to close, one of them asked me, "Would it be possible for you to take me home?" I think this is the same at any store, but it was of course forbidden to date customers. I debated what to do, but it seemed she really had no way to get home, so I decided to keep it a secret and take her back myself. I hadn't really noticed while she was at the club, but she was quite cute and friendly. I even started to think that it might be nice to go on a few dates with her. Whenever she came to the club after that, I made sure to always take her home myself. Of course, I kept this a secret from the others. And it didn't take long until we started actually dating. If anything, I was the one who fell hard for her. One day, I was driving her home after work again, but on the way, I looked outside, sensing a gaze on me, and saw a suspicious-looking man on the side of the road. This is bad. I have to look away, I thought. But for some reason, I couldn't. I'm sure it only lasted a few seconds at best, but until we passed him, I couldn't stop looking at him. After that, I was now able to see that which I wasn't able to beforehand. And by that, I mean the ghost of that suspicious young man. His neck was bent at a weird angle, and he was the only ghost I could see. It was like he was shadowing me. But oddly, I never saw him when I was with my girlfriend. About 2 months after we started dating, I got hungry, so we dropped by a cafe. I'd been to this cafe numerous times because the view of the ocean from the window was gorgeous. Whenever the cafe was empty, I always sat there to order my usual shrimp pilaf and oolong tea. It was evening when we entered, but luckily the cafe was empty. However, for some reason I didn't pick my favourite seat by the window, but rather a dim table in the back. Eh? My girlfriend said suddenly, but I ignored her. The waiter took our order, and for some reason, I ordered something different to usual. I'll have the egg salad sandwich and a banana milk, I said. Again, my girlfriend muttered in surprise. What's wrong? I asked, curious. She remained silent for a moment before she finally answered. It's nothing, really. Just... What? Now I'm curious. Tell me. Don't get upset, but, well, my first date with my first boyfriend was this very store. Okay. And we sat right here. He ordered an egg salad sandwich and a banana milk. It's a weird coincidence, right? Huh. So, where is he now? Her eyes began to fill with tears. Sorry. I guess I shouldn't have asked, huh? It's fine. I'm sorry. Now I've made things weird. It's perfectly fine. If you don't want to say anything, you don't have to. He died. It was a bike accident. As soon as she said that, everything suddenly made sense. Did he perhaps have that accident on the highway? The one near H-Town? How did you know that? Just a hunch. It was just a guess, but I think he was using me to still see her. With that on my mind, we left the cafe and I took her home. The next day, I told my friend about what happened, and he told me I should get cleansed. So, nervously, I visited a shrine and asked them for help. After that, I never encountered that man's ghost again. But my girlfriend also stopped contacting me as well. And, well, given what happened that day, I felt a little weird contacting her too. But after a week passed with no word, of course, I grew worried, so I decided to call her. The number you have called is no longer in use. Wait, what? Panicking, I went over to her house, but nobody lived there. The entire time we were together, what on earth was going on? It was all just so strange. A huge thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, Emerald and Kenneth Kawamoto. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Toshiden, Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4, out right now. And check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana. True Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.